It was just this really powerful and transformational time where we all got to, in a small setting and a confidential and safe space, we got to share our own stories.
We did an exercise about the history of things that happened in Canada. One of the facilitators had laid our tape on the floor, and it was just us having to piece all the injustices that been done to different groups of people. The Japanese, First Nations peoples, the Sikh people, as well as the Chinese people. And it was just all there on that timeline. But for me, it was just really shocking to see that all these groups of people had, at one time or the other, been wronged. They had experienced some form of hurt. And I mean, this short time is not enough to explain that, but just seeing all those writings on lined up as a timeline, it was just, it put me in a different frame of mind. We really need to understand what has happened to get to where we want to go to. And that timeline right there on that floor with all my other friends in the classrooms that I've made during the workshop, it just changed it for me.
I think one of the most impactful moments was when an intergenerational survivor shared her own story in a very courageous and personal way. And when she showed herself, she showed up, she said her story, it opened a stage for everybody else to share their own story and their own vulnerabilities. But because of that vulnerability that was opened up, we trusted each other and we just created a space where we could talk honestly and genuinely and with vulnerability and courage. We got to say our own story, and in a small group setting, and we knew that this would be confidential. We knew that it would be safe, and we knew that by telling each other our own stories, we were really encouraging each other and learning from one another.
For me as an international student, it was just different. I really wasn't very engaged with it. I was like, well, it didn't really happen to my own people, so I didn't really connect with it at that moment. And then all of a sudden, there was just a wave of emotion that I felt inside of me. Sometimes when I'm angry, my fists clench, and I realized my body was beginning to feel those emotions. I was beginning to empathize with the things that had happened to the people. I mean, time is not enough for me to explain how I felt in that moment, but I was just like, oh my God, did this really happen to all these groups of people? Did they really experience this hurt? How did I not hear about it? Nobody told me when I was watching a video about Canada before coming here to study. But the true owners of the land were not represented, but yet all these things happened. And for me, that was a moment of reconciliation. That was a moment of truth-telling. Because how can we really engage in this walk of reconciliation if we don't know what happened in the past? If the people who went through this hurt and not mentioned and not given the opportunity to share their stories, and nobody really was telling me anything while we were doing that timeline. But for me, I feel like there was an audible voice instead of me telling me this happened and that happened and these people faced her, and they were marginalized in so many different ways. And that was a story right there that I did not know. I just realized that if we really need to reconcile with each other, not just with ourselves, but with the people around us, we really need to speak the truth about